Hey guys, how's it going? So in this video I want to talk about a few really important things to know before becoming an au pair. And these are things that I just learned with my experience and after having talking to other friends who have been au pairs, things they would have liked to know before, being an au pair. So I just kind of want to talk about 3 major things that I think are important in this video and hopefully you find helpful, because this can be a really kind of complicated process and a bit confusing at times. So it's just kind of always nice to have other people's opinions and views before doing this and just know the general things. So the first thing I want to talk about is that it's kind of important to expand your horizons. And when I say that, I mean to talk to multiple families at the same time before choosing one. And also before choosing one, having like Skype calls with them or talking with them, video chatting. It's important to talk to more than one family because sometimes you just pick the first one you see and everything seems kind of fine and then you go with them. You don't really have another family to compare it to, especially if it's your first experience. So it's really nice to compare the differences because some families offer more than others. Let's say like maybe they're gonna throw in a meal card for you if they're not home for all the meals, because they're supposed to give you 3 meals a day. That's important to know. And maybe they'll give you like a public transportation card or something, or a Sims card, and maybe others don't. Maybe one pays you more even though you're working less. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's important to kind of compare similarities and differences and what works better for you. So maybe have set up a couple Skype calls with a couple different families before choosing one. It's also important to do this because you get to meet the family first of all, and maybe the kids. But also, sometimes if they don't send pictures, they might show you in the video call like the tour of their house, because it's really important to see what your bedroom looks like. And I say this because it's super important to see it beforehand, because it's necessary, completely necessary, but also it's completely like a rule that they have to have a bedroom, your own separate room for the au pair. And some families might try to use like a normal room, like a living room, and say, oh yep, this is your bedroom, but that does not work. They can't do that. So the second thing I want to talk about is the difference between an au pair and a demi-au pair. So a demi-au pair usually works between 10 to 15 hours. In some countries they say 20 hours, like Australia and New Zealand, but it's usually between 10 and 15. And the reason they say it's more hours in Australia and New Zealand is I think because in general au pairs work like full-time, versus in Europe you're working more like 25 hours, 30, although this again depends on the family. Each family is different, so you'll have a different experience. So this is important to know because demi-au pairs do not get paid. So they work about 10 to 15 hours because this kind of covers their cost of rent and groceries. They shouldn't have to buy food. The family should cover that. And usually students pick this because it's easier for them to study. They don't have to worry about, those 2 bills, and they just work kind of part-time. And it's an option I realize that a lot of people in Australia have done, lots of students do. And that's just one thing to keep in mind. While an au pair will get paid for their services, but they also don't have to pay rent or worry about groceries as well. They shouldn't have to, like I mentioned before. They should be fed 3 meals a day. And the second thing that's important that I really want to talk about is it's really important to have a contract with the family. So a contract has many things. It states a lot of necessary things like your work hours, maybe the days of the week you work, because it's necessary that you have at least 1 day off a week. Some families will give you the weekend off. I've always had the weekend off usually, so I've been lucky. It also states like, I don't know, the length of your stay maybe, just a lot of necessary things. And if something doesn't go right, if the family tries to exploit you, make you work more without paying you more, then you have the contract to back you up and say, listen, this is what you said and this is what you're not doing. We have a contract. And if you're not following your contract, then I don't have to follow it either. And it's important to know that if something's not going right, it's totally okay to find another family and go with them, because your second experience can be a lot better. But if you also want to go home, totally okay. Don't feel like you failed in any way, because this can be kind of a hard job for sure. But I've had friends who have not had contract with their family and something doesn't go right, so they're kind of forced to leave, and it kind of makes it look like, in a way, it was their fault, but it's really not, So it's just important to have and to show that you did all your work before going, all your homework, beforehand. And the last thing that I want to talk about that is also rather important is to have health insurance or travel insurance before you go. So now if you live in Europe and you want to be an au pair in another country in Europe, then I'm pretty sure this isn't necessary. You're already covered in all the European Union countries, you know. But let's say you want to go to another country like Australia, New Zealand, or the US, then it's pretty important to have this, because you really don't know what can happen. Maybe you're not a person who gets sick a lot, but then something comes up. There are a lot of unpredictable things that come into play when you're in different countries, especially if you're there for a long time. My first au pair stay, I was gone for 3 months, didn't have any health problems, didn't have to visit a doctor at all, super fortunate. But my second time I did, and I had a really bad travel insurance. So it's always good to do your homework beforehand and know and compare. So that is all that I have for you guys in this video. If you want to know a little bit more, if you have other questions, just let me know in the comments. I'll be happy to answer those. And I will catch you guys all on the flip side. Ciao, ciao.